Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
It's come to this. No more civil discourse. What's happening in this country today is beyond anything we've ever seen in American politics. Political debate at the very heart of the founding of this country has devolved into political harassment and outright political abuse. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, one of the most prestigious jobs in Washington, D.C., out to dinner, places her order and is then told to leave by the owner because she works for the President of the United States. Sarah quietly leaves. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen this week was literally screamed and heckled out of a restaurant while eating her dinner. Trump supporters are being harassed all across this country by an hysterical left unwilling to accept the decision and the will of the American people who put Donald Trump in office. These unhinged leftists are normalizing outrageous behavior, which is only getting worse. So why is this happening? Once the Democrats' 24/7 Russia collusion illusion nonsense fizzled because there was no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion other than corruption on the part of those at the top level of the FBI and DOJ to frame Donald Trump, the left needed a new issue, a new deflection to some other made-up wrongdoing on the part of Donald Trump. What to accuse him of? What can we blame him for now? They then deflect to the inhumane separation of children from their families at the border. Now, I want to be clear. I have spent my professional life fighting for children who've been victimized and injured and harmed. There is nothing more heartbreaking than children being separated from their parents. Every day, family courts separate parents from their children. Every day, criminal judges separate parents from their children. And every day, children are placed in foster care away from their parents. And I haven't heard anyone on the left complain. Now, for those of you who are so blinded by Trump hatred, there are laws in this country. A primer. When you cross the border into these United States illegally, expect to be arrested. You do not have the right to come here. We did not invite you here, and you cannot stay here. But on your way out, you can thank Bill Clinton and his Flores settlement that requires that children be taken away from their parents within 20 days of crossing the border. And you can also thank Presidents Bush and Obama for signing into law that children cannot be detained at the border longer than 20 days under the Trafficking Victims Protection Acts. And now everyone wants to go after President Trump. This is not something that President Trump created. George Bush did nothing about it. Barack Obama did nothing about it. And by the way, Laura Bush, we haven't seen you for a while. Thanks for entering the fray and calling the removal of children cruel and inhumane. Why didn't you just roll over one night and tell your husband, the president, that his zero-tolerance policy was cruel and inhumane? The left just doesn't care what the facts are. Politicians are willing to stand up and totally contradict themselves in their effort to create political chaos, hatred, and abuse. And Steny Hoyer, the most senior-ranking Democrat in Congress, says this.
He is taking infant children hostage, wrenching them from the arms of their parents, traumatizing them perhaps for life.
Hey, Steny, you've been in Congress for 37 years. You said nothing during the Clinton, Bush, or Obama administration, and now you're worried? And Senator Kamala Harris says this.
We imprison them. We imprison them. We put them behind barbed wires.
Kamala, when you were Attorney General in California, over 1 million people were separated from their children. Does separating of children from families only hurt if Donald Trump is president? And Peter Fonda, he says we should rip the president's son from his mother's arm and put him in a cage with pedophiles. Hey, Peter, how about you get on your motorcycle and take an easy ride off the planet? J-Lo bemoans and trashes the president for this separation of children from parents. Except this child is separated from her parents in Mosul by ISIS. Even Time magazine is so blinded that they ignore all journalistic standards to trash Donald Trump. The child depicted here on the cover was not separated from her mother. In fact, the child here was taken by the mother without the father's permission or knowledge or consent from her home country. And this mother, by the way, had previously been deported. We cannot allow our country to be overrun by illegal immigrants. The only resolution to this problem is to build a wall. Amnesty does nothing but create an incentive for additional crossings by illegals. Make no mistake, the Democrats are simply looking for an issue for the 2018 midterms. And even if they have to lie, create false images, and a movement to intimidate Trump supporters, they will stop at nothing. Folks, we're in a very dangerous place right now. Hate is hate. Hate leads to harassment and abuse. And that abuse leads to violence. And that violence leads to retaliation. Any threat of violence that conjures up a visual of violence is more dangerous than just having different political views. We are a very short distance from those who are willing to cross the line of political debate to those willing to cross the line into political abuse.
It is Monday, the 25th of June of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef to cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special, folks, is River City Hash Mondays. It's been quite a busy weekend, yes indeed. Hey, no health code violations here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We're always doing the stellar cleaning that we always need to do, and everyone does. Apparently, Donald Trump, who has never been to the Red Hen, and I don't know where he got his information, but he's accusing them of being dirty, very dirty, dirty. Oh, I see. He says that their awning needs to be replaced and parts of the exterior need to be painted. And then, as he said, I've always said how a place looks on the outside, and it's got to be how it's going to be on the inside. Well, yes and no. Because I suppose one could say that Trump's properties look okay on the outside? I don't know. I always figured anybody who went to that extreme to make it look that pretty. And when I say pretty, I mean petty dictator chic. Usually that's indicative of something not too good happening back there behind the doors. And you're usually correct. I reported in previous years the many health code violations that Trump properties have been, charged with. Now, I didn't have enough time to search completely, but last year's health code inspection, Red Hen, passed. They passed it. They didn't have any. There was nothing. There were no problems. Now, that's not to say that, in previous years, Red Hen may have had, they weren't holding something at a proper temperature, or somebody, the cooks weren't wearing a meat thermometer. You carry your meat thermometer with you everywhere you go. And that may have been the case. But Trump properties, Mar-a-Lago last year was charged with, having a month-old... what was it? It was caviar that was more than a month beyond its expiration date. Now, expiration dates have their own, issues also. But you don't want to be caught with an expired product on your shelves, in your reach-in, in your freezer, in your walk-in, anywhere, when the health people come by. So it's not a good thing. And holding sushi... 54 degrees, folks. Ugh. Now that's scary. Yeah, that's like right up there with sushi out of one of those gas station sushi packages that you can buy. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. You won't make it to the next rest stop if your state has them. Okay. Well, Trump craves to be Kim Jong-un. He's not kidding. So let's stop with this, all right? Well, little kids continue to be separated from their parents, and they're actually being used as bargaining chips. You want your kid back? Sign here. Now leave. But we know that you're going back to a place where you're probably going to get killed, so it just takes it off us. We don't have to waste our resources to kill you, because eventually we will. That's what he wants. He's begging to be like Duterte, where he can just go and summarily execute someone because he feels like it. And these people don't, there's no due process for them. Well, actually, there is due process. Today's new due process is merely just paperwork with no judges involved. You don't need judges. All you need are some guards to tell people what the F to do. They're the judges now. I keep saying this guy never learned American civics in America. He learned it from somewhere else. And I don't think he learned it growing up. I'm saying that he learned this in some sort of intensive. Yeah, he was in part of an intensive, that's for sure. Well, let's get to what we're going to attend to today. Oh, Jeanine Pirro. Can you believe the amount of projection that these people can muster? It is so amazing to me. Without any sense of irony. God, Jeanine Pirro is the worst flamethrower. Jeez. Ugh. Well, what's on the rest of our menu today? Continuing in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Private companies are making millions detaining immigrant kids taken from their parents. No wonder Trump wants to hold them indefinitely. I'd like to know what kind of, private prisons are going to be put on military bases now. Isn't that a layer upon a layer? Jared Kushner doesn't like reading history books, but he has a new Middle East peace plan that's never been planned before, and he ought to know. He doesn't read. And Neil Gorsuch says he'll repeal and replace the Fourth Amendment with something really terrific. That's the seat that the Republicans held open and refused to let the sitting president fill because he was the black president. And he might have filled it with someone, who believed in the rule of law. After the break, we move to the chef's table where some fine reportage by Farenthold from the Washington Post. He found out that Trump signed tax returns with false information under penalty of perjury at least 4 times. And Trump's cadre of ghouls may be incompetent at a spectacular level, but they're also cruel and nasty to the bone. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice the chat room link on the rightish, monitored by our roaring girl, Kelly Lincoln. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will also notice the contribute donate buttons put there deftly by superior graphic design to entice you to contribute and donate to the cause of resistance here at Netroots Radio, and we are unable to do this without you, and thank you very much, sincerely, from the bottom of our hearts, for allowing us to resist. All right, and you are too, so thank you so much. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that platform. Thank you, Tom. I ostensibly take care of the Facebook page, so you can go to the Facebook page. Stuff just happens automatically. I let Facebook handle it. Yeah, that's what I do. They do whatever they do. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and also West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is at Cookbook West. You can also, and this is probably a must, check out the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos. I'm on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam, because all the show notes and links are there. Okay, let's get on with the rest of the menu, except I should mention that podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be had by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIns, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Okay, first story here out in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Stephanie Griffith from Think Progress. Private companies are being paid millions of dollars in lucrative federal government contracts to provide housing and other services for undocumented immigrant children, including the thousands of recently arrived youngsters customers. Yeah, they're the product, actually. Separated from their relatives at the U.S. border. Yeah, come on. We need, it's sort of like the privateers. It's like piracy. They are pirates. They are pirating human cargo. Unbelievable. Slave ships are patrolling the borders of our country and taking in anybody. Oh, you want some asylum? We'll give you asylum. Here, stay here. You'll be safe. We'll take care of you. After reviewing publicly available contracts, Yahoo News found 10 different contracts totaling approximately $92 million, awarded to 5 different vendors starting in September 2017. The contracts lasted for 5 years through September 2022 because, well, they were planning this ahead of time. This isn't so willy-nilly now, is it? Okay, somebody's got to be making money. A Florida-based company, Comprehensive Health Services, which boasts experience with immigrant shelter services. Huh. Why do I have images of the Chain Gang and Cool Hand Luke when I hear immigrant shelter services? What we have here is a failure to communicate. Well, they received the bulk of the contracts. Okay. The company was awarded 3 contracts worth about $65 million. Well, that's quite a bit of money to deny services to people so you can make a profit. Let's see. Last February, the company was awarded a contract worth $30.9 million to operate an emergency shelter in Homestead, Florida, with 500 UAC beds, an acronym referring to Unaccompanied Alien Children, UX. Southwest Key Programs was awarded 2 contracts in September 2017 worth up to about $1.8 million each for providing emergency shelter operations. Oh, they have the tents. Okay. A company in Maryland, Dynamic Service Solutions, in September of last year was awarded a government contract up to about $8.7 million to provide, quote, shelter care for unaccompanied children. And a fourth company, Dynamic Educational Systems, a subsidiary of the Arizona firm Exodyne, was awarded a pair of contracts worth up to approximately $5.6 million for emergency shelter operations. Wow. It's almost sort of like the clearing out of the ghetto in Warsaw, and you had to have some place to put them. Wow, they were just, it's sort of like party planning when you think about it. And that's how they do it. It's all based on party planning. Trump earlier this week said his administration would stop separating immigrant parents and their children because he'd like to see them all held together until they die. He read it in a book, My Struggle. Okay, the controversial policy of taking children from their parents was part of a new zero-tolerance policy in which U.S. officials arrested all undocumented adults entering the U.S. at any border cross other than official ports of entry. Because you know what they did? Oh, well, you're in line right now. Looks like you're number 12,042. But if you go down the river just a little ways over there and cross, tell the men that are there that you're seeking asylum, and they'll take you where you need to go. And that's what they did. Once they were arrested, the children were taken away and held in separate facilities, a departure from past practice wherein parents and young children were detained together or released pending future court proceedings. But Trump doesn't want court proceedings. They want judges. Get rid of the judges. All we need are men with guns. And Masha Varkiani penned this next offering here for the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, says he has a new peace plan for Palestine and Israel. Kushner, who once said that he has no desire to read books or learn the history of the region, announced his new plan in an interview with the Palestinian daily newspaper Al-Quds. He said he was almost done with the plan and that it would be released very soon. In the interview, Kushner criticized Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas and tried to appeal to the Palestinian people directly. President Abbas says that he is committed to peace, and I have no reason not to believe him, Kushner said. However, I do question how much President Abbas has the ability to, or is willing to, lean into finishing a deal. What is this lean into BS, Jared? Jargon? Sounds like jargon to me. He has his talking points, Jared continued, which have not changed in the last 25 years, but leaning into something. Now that's changing the jargon. There has been no peace deal achieved in that time to make a deal both sides. Well, wait a second. Actually, there was something in place, and you guys destroyed it. But, I see what you're saying. Al-Quds editor Walid Abu Zalaf, who conducted the interview in Arabic, asked Kushner about statements from Abbas's spokesman that called Kushner's trip to the region a waste of time and bound to fail. In response, Kushner said, Palestinian leadership is saying those things because they are scared, and we will release our peace plan, and the Palestinian people will actually like it. Really? You mean you're going to give back all the olive tree orchards that have been burned or bulldozed over? You're going to give back all the dead babies? Is that what's going to happen, Jared? You're going to figure that one out? I think that there's some people there in the Palestinian region that are kind of like, hey, wait a second. Ugh. Well, see, this is what happens when you don't read history and you have no intention of it because you think you're reinventing the wheel. And you are. You're trying to reinvent the wheel, except you haven't figured out how to keep the pointy sides off of it so it doesn't jostle everything around. Well, the Kushner family has also helped fund Israeli settlements in the West Bank, a fact that the senior advisor left off of his financial records when he filed with the Office of Government Ethics last year. The funding didn't stop even after Kushner was tasked with brokering a peace plan. Offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article also out of Think Progress by Ian Melheiser, and I'm not going to be able to get through all of this. And this is one of those times when going to the show notes and links will be very helpful. Now, as a presidential candidate, Trump offered a vague promise to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act with something terrific. And on Friday, Neil Gorsuch, who occupies a seat on the Supreme Court that Senate Republicans held open until Trump could fill it, he brought a similar amount of thoughtfulness and coherence to the question of when police should be allowed to conduct a search without a warrant. Gorsuch's dissenting opinion in Carpenter v. United States is an odd piece of writing. It reads less like a judicial opinion and more like the sort of essay that an overworked law professor might toss off after they suddenly realize that they have a symposium paper due at the end of the week. After lecturing his colleagues for 20 pages about how he has uncovered a way of interpreting the Fourth Amendment that is more tied to the law than the last half-century of Supreme Court decisions on the subject. And Gorsuch does this. He has such a high and mighty attitude about himself. I think it goes with this cadre of ghouls, as I call them. They all have the same elevated sense of importance. Well, now Gorsuch outright refuses to apply this mysterious new interpretation to the case at hand. I've got this really great idea, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Now, this is the dissenting opinion, okay? Because even Alito thinks that Gorsuch is way out there. Carpenter asked whether law enforcement can, without first getting a warrant, use cell phone records to pinpoint where a particular suspect traveled over a course of weeks, months, or potentially even years. A majority of the court, Chief Justice John Roberts plus the 4 liberal justices, held that the answer to this question is no. Until its final pages, Gorsuch's dissent reads as if he agrees with the majority's conclusion. It's only at the very end that Gorsuch reveals he is casting a vote in favor of the government because the lawyers on the other side failed to anticipate the specific way that Gorsuch wants to repeal and replace a half-century of established law. And it all goes on reasonable expectations of privacy, folks. And Olmstead is invoked. And you thought Olmstead was up there, like with the Dred Scott decision? Not to Neil. So the rest of the article can, of course, be found on my show notes and links diary at Daily Kos, so go check that out. Well, we better get to our break, and when we come back, we'll, of course, go through weather from around the world, and then we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Ocean's Gone Girl. The new Ocean's 8 isn't so much a reboot of the highly successful franchise. It's more like a continuation of it in female hands, with the protagonist being Danny Ocean's younger sister Debbie. In an opening scene that mimics Clooney's from Ocean's 11, a crocodile-tearful Debbie reveals during a parole hearing that Danny is dead and all she wants is a regular job and a simple life. However, since she's an Ocean, we know that isn't going to happen. Cut to the next few scenes and we watch the newly released Debbie walking off with several $100s worth of beauty items from a department store and conning her way into a luxury hotel room. It turns out that while serving a 5-year sentence, she's come up with a plan to steal a $150 million necklace during New York's annual Met Gala ball. Of course, carrying out such a task requires lots of planning and a professional team, so Debbie sets about recruiting only the best, including characters played by Cate Blanchett, Sarah Paulson, Mindy Kaling, and Helena Bonham Carter. The plan is not as out there as that of Ocean's 11, but it is intriguing, as is the clever revenge subplot targeting the person that landed Debbie in jail. There are also some fun cameos, including Heidi Klum and legendary Vogue editor Anna Wintour. The cast here is A-list to be sure, but not unlike in other celebrity vehicles like this, many are underused, such as Sarah Paulson's thief-turned-soccer mom, and even the usually dynamic Cate Blanchett. However, newcomers to the screen, Rihanna and Asian-American rapper Aquafina, shine, and Anne Hathaway is great as the parody of the spoiled actress who may or may not be in on the heist. Ocean's 8 may not be in a class with the original, but it is some summer fun. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Travel the U.S., and you'll hear English spoken in a multitude of ways. And it turns out the same can go for songbirds, specifically the swamp sparrow. Scientists have now used those swamp sparrow regional dialects, together with computer simulations, to extrapolate how the sparrow's songs have changed and evolved over time. And they found that certain song motifs could date back hundreds, even thousands of years.
That's where, frankly, it blew me away, I have to say.
Steve Nowicki, a biologist at Duke University.
If Leif Erikson had taken time, once he discovered North America, to get as far in as northwestern Pennsylvania, where I was just last week, he would have heard some, not many, but some of the same song types that I was just listening to.
The study is in the journal Nature Communications. Passing learned information from generation to generation, that sounds a whole lot like culture.
It is culture. These birds are showing a persistence of cultural tradition that is heretofore unknown and, sort of matches that of the best cultural persistence we might see in human culture.
But sparrows aren't as cognitively complex as humans, he says, implying that you don't need human-type smarts to develop cultural traditions. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today, the nations of the world are increasingly dependent on each other. Nations have many ways of interacting. One example is cultural, scientific, and business exchanges. Doctors, scientists, educators, and business people from many countries meet to share advances in their fields. Another example is humanitarian aid. During natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes, countries help the victims in other countries by sending medicine, food, and shelter to suffering people. Nations also interact through trade. Countries buy and sell factory goods, farm products, and services to one another. Another example is diplomacy, which is the practice of carrying on formal relationships with governments of other countries. The official representatives of countries meet and discuss issues important to their governments. They work together in a peaceful manner to find solutions to common problems. Countries also make treaties and agreements. For example, they agree to promote trade among themselves and to protect the environment. Some agree to help each other in time of war. However, when two or more countries cannot solve their disagreements peacefully, they sometimes threaten to use military force. Sometimes the disagreement results in a war. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Let's examine a Trump lie about immigrants. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Trump keeps tweeting and proclaiming that immigrants are criminals, drug dealers, traffickers, and gang members. And unfortunately, it seems that if you repeat a lie often enough, some people will actually start to believe it. But Trump's lie is still a lie. Indeed, large-scale studies examining crime data over several decades demonstrate that Trump has it wrong, has it backwards. And cities that Trump has specifically targeted with his anti-immigrant racist language, including Oakland, California, and Lawrence, Massachusetts, that have indeed experienced increased immigration, also have falling crime rates. The most recent large-scale study shows that immigration has the effect of reducing average crime or demonstrating that there's simply no relationship between the two. As reported in the New York Times, Controlling for Population Characteristics, Unemployment Rates, and Other Socioeconomic Conditions, the researchers found that on average, as immigration increases in American metropolises, crime decreases. And another study from early 2017 similarly concluded that there either is no relationship between crime rates and immigration rates, or there's a beneficial relationship. Because, quote, immigrant communities bring economic and cultural revitalization to the neighborhoods they join. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
The Koch brothers believe that their great wealth entitles them to rule over the many. So, for decades, they've been running a surreptitious assault on the rules that protect the majority of us from their abuse. From whacking our voting rights to busting unions, their plutocratic intent is nothing less than to pull a coup on democracy, installing a government of, by, and for the super-rich. They've enlisted a secretive cadre of other billionaires who share their extreme kleptocratic belief that 1, property rights of the rich are more important than the people's political rights. 2, that majority rule is not a good form of governing. And 3, that the makers, as the billionaires dubbed themselves, should be able to overrule collective actions of the lower classes, whom they call takers. They've created a complex, sophisticated web of right-wing front groups that have already corporatized a slew of our most basic laws and institutions. And they've gained a chokehold on nearly every level of government, including our courts and whole states like Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. To carry out their attacks, they've essentially taken over the Republican Party. Even more shocking than the arrogance of this unprecedented power grab by the conspiracy of billionaires is its quiet success. The Koch coup crept up on us because it abhorred publicity and couched each move as an independent effort by a separate group. Then, the conspirators backed the Supreme Court's outrageous 2010 Citizens United decision, decreeing that unlimited corporate spending is allowed because it's, quote, free speech. Only then did Americans begin waking up to the reality that the Kochs were making an assault on democracy itself. This is Jim Hightower saying, to learn more, check out the extensive Koch web files at the Center for Media and Democracy at exposedbycmd.org/coke.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on June 25th, 2018. I'm C. Marie Ainsborough. For the first time, a global union has elected exclusively women to its top management positions. Uni Global Union has elected Christy Hoffman as its General Secretary and Elke Bosinger as its Deputy General Secretary. Uni is the global union for skills and services. It represents some 20 million workers who are employed in sectors such as finance, IT, media, hair and beauty, tourism, sports, and garment production. Naturally, given the historic decision, both newly elected leaders addressed the struggles of working women in their addresses to the delegates. Here is Uni's new General Secretary, Christy Hoffman.
It's our time to make big leaps forward for all working women. Because sexual harassment is pervasive, there are many surveys out there, but most of them show that about half of working women report they've been victim of sexual harassment. That's in every country where there's been a service taken, half. And low-wage service jobs are the worst of all. So that's us, everybody. So what can we do? One thing we can do, of course, is to try to make sexual harassment illegal in our countries. Many countries have done so, but not all, and most of the laws don't really help us as much as we would like. Also, we are trade unionists. I believe in the union solution, and for all of us involved in collective bargaining, this is the time to put our most ambitious demands on the table. We should get a process with every employer. The process should protect people who come forward, and it should give some meaningful punishments for those who are the wrongdoers, but also it should be fair for everybody. This is the time, an unrivaled opportunity for us to get these provisions which can go beyond whatever our laws provide. We can also negotiate sexual harassment protections in every global framework agreement. And then, for those women without a union, and let's face it, that is the vast majority, this should only strengthen our resolve to bring these women into a union, to let them know that protection from sexual harassment is another reason to come together and organize. Sisters, can we make this happen? Yes, we can!
Elected as Deputy General Secretary at Uni's World Congress in Liverpool was Elke Bosinger.
Without women in the workplace, everywhere in the world, all of our economies will not grow to the extent that they need and could. And of course, men and women must be paid equal wages. Is that too much to ask? We need laws that help to move women through the glass ceiling. And those of us who've made it, we must help others by sharing our experience, by putting out a helping hand, by coaching or mentoring other women. But the role of men and boys is also critical in this. It's not just women who should be fighting for equality, but men too, as gender stereotyping hurts them just as much as it hurts women. In a male-dominated world, the empowerment of women must be a key priority. And we, the women, already have what it takes to succeed. A wise mother once said to her daughter, "If you aim to be as good as a man, you're not very ambitious." Friends, empowerment is about breaking structural barriers. Men still dominate, even in countries that consider themselves progressive. We all become better off when we open doors of opportunity for women. Women's rights are human rights, and attacks on women are attacks on all of us. Violence against women and girls is perhaps the most obvious manifestation of the deep imbalances of power in our societies. We must act together and for the nearly 1 billion women who will enter the global economy in the next decade. With Christy and myself, Uni will have an all-women team leading this great organization. And it's our ambition to make Uni an organization where gender equality is embedded in everything we do. Organizing women into unions and helping them fulfill their goal is a key priority for us.
The delegates at the Uni Congress, which was conducted from June 17th to 20th, also elected a new president. Ruben Cortina from Argentina is the former president of Uni Americas. I'm Sue Marie Ainsdale. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays, folks. That's right. We put it all together for your enjoyment. Indeed. Well, we are going to be much cooler here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. We went up to about 104 yesterday with a relative humidity of just a tick under 70%, so pretty dry. And today we are going to be much, much, much cooler because as soon as I can scroll down here, I'll tell you we're going to be, okay, so it has changed in the last several minutes. We are now going to have a projected high of about 83, 84, so a 20-degree swing. It's going to be chilly. And right now the winds are out of the south, a negligible 1 mile per hour. And we'll be picking up in a couple of hours this morning, coming out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing through the night. And then tomorrow they'll be shifting out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. I like it. It's a scouring wind. Okay, so we will be in this low to mid-80s. And I would say maybe like around the mid-80s to upper 80s. That's what it will be for where I am at. That will continue and maybe through the weekend, but we'll see. The weekend's a little far away for now, isn't it? High pressure dominates at 29.94 inches. Visibility is at about 9 miles, and humidity is, wow. A while ago, it was 74%. It's now down to 70%. That's interesting. We're going to be dried out again today as well. Okay. So, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 84 degrees and sunny. Paris is 76 and fair. Paris. Rome is 72 degrees and mostly cloudy with a weather advisory for thunderstorms that could knock out critical infrastructure. Kiev is 75 and fair. Kabul is 80 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 79 degrees with rain showers. Tokyo is 75 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 48 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and cloudy with a wind advisory for small craft on the bay and offshore. And New York, New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First article here at the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays is by Cody Fenwick. You know, the Washington Post's David Farenthold has been meticulously tracking the president's finances. We don't say the P word often here at Networks Radio. It violates our style manual. So we just refer to him as like Donald Trump or Donnie Two Scoops or something like that. But Farenthold has been checking Trump's finances and tracking them, and he's also been checking it 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 times. At least 3 times, because he's a journalist. Donald Trump signed the Trump Foundation tax returns in 4 different years when they contained demonstrably false information, according to a report by Washington Post reporter David Farenthold. As Farenthold notes, when you sign a tax return, you pledge that the information is accurate to the best of your knowledge under penalty of perjury. Knowingly falsifying a tax return is a felony under federal law. Many noted that, by contrast, unauthorized border crossing is only a misdemeanor. Yeah, but those are potential MS-13 members, and Trump is just already, how worse could he get? I mean, he's already a Russian spy turning over America to Vlad. He's not a spy, he's at least a useful dupe. The false information Farenthold reports on, which is confirmed by a recent New York Attorney General lawsuit, concerns Trump's use of his foundation to personally benefit himself, make a political donation, and to help his business. These acts are all barred under the law governing charitable foundations. But, a true charity, one whose administrative costs are well under 11%, and they might be under 7%. I got to check that out again. But anything, if it's 15 to 22%, that's really at the upper reaches of what you want your money to go to, or where you'd like your money to go to. That's too high of administrative costs. Anything 20, 30%, give me a break. And the Clinton Foundation is a true foundation. Oh, but they were helping the disenfranchised, the sick, the infirmed, all the losers of the world. Oh, God. Will Trump ever face any consequences for these errors? Probably not while he's a sitting president. It's often hard to bring a case against someone when the only evidence is the false statements themselves. Prosecutors usually like to have other evidence, such as emails documenting an intentional cover-up to prove that the crime was committed knowingly. See, Trump could always say, I don't know, I'm an idiot. I got the best brain in the world, but I'm an idiot. That's how come he has the best brain in the world. He's smart enough to really just be an idiot. That's what I usually get up against. The more expertise you have, the less you know. That's what I get from people that I speak with on occasion. It's really quite disconcerting, so I've just given up on them. I'm sorry. All I can do is make their lives comfortable so they can live it out, and, they'll fritter it away. They always do. Now, there's also the little fact that it's unclear whether a sitting president can be indicted. If the office provides immunity, any such prosecution would have to take place once he's out of office. But once he's out of office, will we really have an extradition treaty with Moscow then? I don't think so. If, on the other hand, the IRS does not pursue any public punishment against Trump, but rather does nothing or pursue civil penalties in secret, lawyers said they worry the effect would be to erode other taxpayers' willingness to follow the law, like most of his base. All of it. Trump's best defense against any potential charges would simply be to say that he had no idea he did anything wrong, because as a mobster, everything he does is correct, isn't it? That's how they work. I don't know. There's also the fact that he made the mistakes repeatedly over several years. How likely is that all one big accident?
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
All right, finishing up here at the chef's table is an article out of Common Dreams. Our I Alone Can Fix It president has gotten us in another fix, all right. Of course, whenever he screws up big time, Mr. I Alone starts blaming everyone but Mr. I Alone. He admitted as much the other day when he was in Singapore for a summit with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and bragged about the great deal he imagined he had made. I may stand before you in 6 months and say, hey, I was wrong. Actually, he stood before us just a few days later and said, just last week, said, hey, I was wrong. I don't know what I'll ever admit that, but I'll find some kind of excuse. He was in his gruesome way joking. But many a truth in jest, etc., etc., etc. So, just this last week, the Daily 202, the compendium of political news from the Washington Post, made a list of the many times Donald Trump has tried to avoid responsibility when he ended DACA, when Congress failed to completely scuttle Obamacare, when anti-gun violence legislation failed to pass, when the tax cut plan was in danger, when a failed covert operation in Yemen cost the life of a Navy SEAL. Time and time again, Trump has sought to shift the blame for his own decisions and their consequences to his political opponents. Well, that's what Goebbels and Goering said to do. Blame your opponent for every crime you commit. Blame your opponent for every mistake you make. That way it's out there and people believe, oh, well, it's just when the other side starts doing it, they're doing it because it's the lie. It's just, well, children in detention camps without their mothers and fathers, the youngest in tender age facilities. Now, there's a tawdry Orwellian use of a loving word like tender, if there ever was one. At first, Trump saw this inhumane fiasco as a success, while simultaneously claiming it wasn't his fault, pointing his stubby little fingers at everyone else, Democrats, Congress, the courts, Obama, of course, and even G.W. Bush. But at bottom, and I do mean bottom, Trump, such White House horrors as Stephen Miller, John Kelly, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and their compliant cronies are responsible and have been willing to lie to us time and time again as they held babies hostage to Trump's obsession with his stupid border wall. They're a cadre of ghouls, as I call them. In this reporter's opinion, they are really a cadre of ghouls. Trump and his crowd are dedicated to curdling the milk of human kindness. They fill their pockets while destroying America in a misbegotten attempt to take it back to a time of ethnic purity that never really was, while establishing a new gilded age where only a handful can prosper at the expense of everyone else. We are becoming a mean boy nation, a nation once of immigrants but now one of bullies and tyrants. Trump breaks everything he sees, including our democracy and our republic. Indeed. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for today, but we'll be back tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, yeah. Stay tuned for more breaking news as it breaks on Netroots Radio throughout the day. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.